Edit audio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Hopkins, and this is Well Adjusting, where I talk to people about life stuff, but not in an NPR way. It's more like we're at the bar, having cocktails, getting into your business sort of way.
It's giving drunk NPR.
Oh, and producer Steph is here too.
Hello.
Today we chat, well, is life better abroad? Welcome back, friends. I have to tell you, life is lifing lately. Jobs are hard to come by. Many work industries are in transition, and it's got us all, okay, well, maybe not all of us, but it's definitely got me thinking about what life might be like living abroad. And as soon as I started thinking about this, I knew exactly who I wanted to chat with about this topic. My pal, Carolyn Cohagan. She is an author, and she writes this fantastic Substack called Escape Hatch France, where she talks about being a Gen Xer and trying to retire in France. I mean, it is fantastic, folks. So this episode, it's for anyone who is asking themselves this question: is where I'm living right now where I want to stay? Let's get right to it. Here's Carolyn.
My name is Carolyn Cohagan. I am currently in Austin, Texas. I am a writer, sometimes performer, which is how I know Mrs. Robin Hopkins from our stand-up days. And my husband and I currently split our time between Texas and France.
Yes, we have known each other since our idiotic 20s, sort of drunk, sort of stand-up-y, sort of funny. And then the two of us in the back of a room as women in the comedy scene in the 90s when it was glad they let you in the door. And the two of us being I'm thinking of leaving comedy. Don't tell anybody. And then you were I'm thinking of leaving comedy.
Yeah, it was a real don't tell anyone, but I like to act too. That was verboten. It was if you wanted to act at all, then you were betraying stand-up and you weren't a real
You're
comic.
just trying to get a sitcom. That's all you're trying to do.
Man.
Yeah. It was that was some
what
really
kind of
negative
wants
thing.
A sitcom?
I know. God forbid we get paid and have insurance. Well, I don't know about you, but somewhere around COVID, I started thinking about, my wife and I were what are we doing with the next phase? The kids are, what are we going to do? And we started thinking about where we would live and all of that. And we were Santa Barbara. We just couldn't come up with anything. We've just been thinking about it. And then around the same time, you started your amazing Substack and you started your journey about living between Texas and France. So could you tell people what the journey has been like?
We're home during COVID and luckier than many in that we didn't get terribly sick, but luckier than many in just that Roberto continued to work because he works in construction, and that was deemed really important in Texas. So he was still going to work, but still, as everybody, it was 2 years of us on our own, right? So politics had so much to do with it, right? As we all know, that was Trump's first term. Everything was crazy making. We felt so helpless against it. And at some point, it kind of started with a Times article, New York Times article, with this woman talking about how she'd always dreamed of living in Italy her entire life. And then finally, when she retired, she was let's do it. And she and her husband moved to this town in Italy. They didn't speak Italian or whatever. And, we're so happy and living this wonderful life. And the thing that kind of clicked for me is that they didn't move to the middle of nowhere and they didn't move to Rome, And I think in my head, I had always pictured moving abroad as one of those two things. You either go to Paris or you get the chateau in the country that's all run down and there's a really hot guy that's going to come do all of your, reconstruction, and you're going to fall in love and you're going to open a vineyard.
And you get it for $40,000. Yeah, of course.
But I'm not a live in the middle of nowhere person. I'm not a renovator. And funnily enough, my husband, I said, who works in construction as an architect, was not interested at all. But once we started thinking, hey, we could find a place that's mid-size. We want to be able to walk everywhere. We don't want a car. So good public transportation. We want to be able to go see movies and go out to dinner and see theater. And, we really wanted a very rich social life and artistic, creative life, all of those things, right? So it was where can we find that? And that just started to sound so appealing. So what was so lucky for me was that my husband was on board with this, that when I said, I do that. We read this Italy article and he was like, yeah, I do that. And we were just like, whoa.
Like casing each other out. I'd do it. Would you do it?
I'd do it. Would you?
I'd do it. Maybe. Cool.
And the truth, we've been married for 10 years. So we haven't been together for 50 years and feeling each other out about these things, for decades, and maybe talking about retirement for decades. But when we were having the retirement conversations with people, we weren't getting excited.
That's it. Nothing's exciting.
Big disclaimer here is Roberto and I don't have children. When we talk to people about retirement, it was either we haven't thought about it at all, which seems shocking because I'm 53 and at the time we were in our late 40s. We haven't thought about it at all. Or I feel like there is an attraction to Florida for New Yorkers if you think your friends are going, right? There's a huge community of New Yorkers. But seriously, there's so much to be said about having community. And when I read about or hear about someone who has moved to a community in Florida and they've got 10 friends from New York, fantastic. Then honestly, it doesn't matter that much about where you are, right? You're the Golden Girls. You're like, okay, I've got my people. The weather's nice. We're going to make it happen. So once we read this article and we both kind of realized that we would be up for this kind of adventure, we started to research.
Yeah, that's a good place to pause because, for our listeners, oftentimes our episodes are like someone who's in the middle of a problem. And technically, you are in the middle of, I wouldn't call it a problem, but you're in the middle of a 5-year process of going back and forth, trying to get visas. And anyone who reads your Substack knows that it's like a problem every other week that you have to work through. However, for me, the idea that maybe Mary and I might do this, and I'm P.S. still working on Mary, as Steph could tell her, we went out for drinks the other night, and Mary was had Steph in a corner, and she was like, I'm scared. And I was like, don't listen to her, we're going. But for me, it kicked off when we came and visited you. I was like, I could see this. But I think I've got the largest pair of rose-colored glasses on, even reading your stories. So I want to talk about the process and what's come up and what's hard and what you thought it was going to be to start and then what you initially came up against. Let's start there.
As far as me being in the middle of a problem, it is kind of my heart's in two places and I'm a little brokenhearted no matter which place I'm in. And that is challenging and also sort of figuring out at this point, how long do we want to do 6 months and 6 months?
Because I was going to say, do you think that could be caused by the back and forth? Yeah. If you were to just stay in one place and visit the other, would that alleviate any of that? Or
well, I should start by saying our initial vision was, after all this research, so if people are interested in that it really is all over the blog, and it's especially in the beginning, the first 10 or so newsletters, I break down the research of which countries we looked at, why we chose France. Once we chose France, how did we find the city? And then once we chose the city, how did we approach real estate, that kind of thing? Because our idea was the dollar is really strong right now. So this was 2022. And it was stronger than it had been, honestly, in my lifetime. And so I thought, okay, this is the time we can go, we'll buy an apartment. And things were so much cheaper than Austin. Austin has become outrageously expensive, right? We just thought, okay, the 2-bedroom apartment looks it was $2,000, and we were like, okay, man, maybe we can do this. And so we thought, oh, we're going to buy it because the time is right and the dollar's strong, but we're not going to live in it, right? Maybe we'll go for summers and we'll rent it out the rest of the year. And then when we're ready to retire, we'll start going there full time. We also took into account healthcare was a big part of this, and making sure we were going to a country with good healthcare, but specifically a good city. And the city we chose, Montpellier, it's in the south, has the oldest medical school in the Western Hemisphere, and it's still going strong. And so it is full of doctors, right? So there are all these reasons that above and beyond the French healthcare system, we knew that it would be a good place to grow old, But then went for a month, and then we went for 3 months, and then we went for 6 months. We just fall in love with it more and more every time we go, and it gets harder and harder to leave. Honestly, my husband's ready to be there year round.
So you're the one who's saying no?
I'm the more complicated case because my family is in Austin and my mother is here and she's 78.
Yeah.
And my brother's here and my nephews, you know what? But now like my nephews have both gone off to college, which makes things easier. But yeah, lots and lots of friends. I grew up here, you know. But what's interesting, when I moved back after LA, I didn't have a really strong community. I had to rebuild a writing community. I eventually found this music community. And I have to remind myself of that because that all took a decade. It takes 10 years, you know, at least, and at our age, to make new friends and to find your people.
Well, and you know, that's what's so interesting is I always just thought, well, I'll just stay in New York until I make it, and then I'll be wherever they want me to be to work. Well, yeah, I'm still waiting on making it, and nobody cares where I am. You know, I said to Mary, I was like, I just always thought I would stay here to finish my career. I'm like, am I really holding us back from going somewhere because I'm on hold for a Stanley Steamer carpet cleaner commercial? Like, is that really the stage that we're at?
Exactly.
And I wish I was kidding. I didn't even get Gladys. But my point is that I do think that this community thing starts to come up. Like, that's something that you and I are really similar, like, type person in that, like, I build my people. Steph is exactly like this. Steph's the best community builder I've ever met. Like, wherever I go, I'm looking for the good people. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll keep you. But, you know, wherever we go, we're starting over again. And I do find that I'm very intrigued by wanting all my friends to be. Did you go with no community, and what was that like?
Part of the reason that we chose France, or I should say Europe, is because I do have some friends there. And we have managed to see each other every single time that we go. So I sort of tell myself too that like friendships have seasons, right?
Yeah.
So I do tell myself that, okay, these are other people that I really love and I haven't seen. I reconnected with a friend in London who I hadn't seen in like 35 years. And she's so delightful and her family's delightful. And now I've seen her twice. So that's been really important. And I knew when we were looking at places, because people get really excited about Costa Rica. They're like, I'm going to go to Argentina. I don't speak Spanish, but that was not nearly as influential on me as the fact that we didn't know anybody there.
Yeah. I feel like I can get a crew to Europe. So that like a 2-3 hours away from me feels like enough. That's all the more of the Robin you're going to want. Is like I'll come in, we'll hang out for a weekend, and then I'll probably go home. That's for the best for everybody.
And the train, right? The train makes it also doable.
Hey friend, I'm just jumping in here to say that we've got a new way to get in touch with us. If you want to leave us some feedback, hopefully good, or suggest an episode topic or ask a question, all you have to do is go to sayhi.chat/welladjusting. The link's in the show notes, but I'll say it one more time. sayhi.chat/welladjusting. You could leave us a voice memo and we might just use it on air. And if you happen to be enjoying this episode, why not go ahead and subscribe to the podcast or rate and review us. You won't regret it, folks. What do you think about when we started talking about this idea for this episode? You know, our lead producer is from the UK and another person on the team is from the UK. And they were like, well, we have to make sure we're, you know, those Americans are coming over and doing that American thing, you know, and just being like finding the expats. And it's like, and I said, oh my God, I said, Carolyn couldn't be the further from that. I was like, but it's like, what are your thoughts on that? And have you seen it in real time over there?
I don't like saying it, and I'm going to do a quick aside about why. And I don't really understand that if you're going from a rich country to a poor country, you're an expat. And if you're from a poor country going to a rich country, you're an immigrant, right? That's
gross.
So I've been trying to get rid of expat in my vocabulary, but it's hard because it's so specific, right? I've written about this as well because it was a quote I read and I loved it. And it was talking about friendship markets and how making friends, a lot of it depends on you being in the friendship market and the other person being in the friendship market, right? And the problem, like when I moved back to Austin, was everybody had kids. People had been here for so long, they had their people, right?
Yeah.
They weren't hiring.
The taxi cab light was off.
Yeah, so it felt tough, you know? Whereas in France, there is an American and British immigrant community there. And they are very social. They get together all the time. And they are very much in the friendship market. The blog has been really, really good for meeting people because people read it. And a lot of people have read it and they'll be like, hey, I'm moving to Montpellier. Can we have dinner or drinks? And you guys, If it was Austin, LA, or New York, I'm like, I don't have time to have a drink with strangers. Who
Yeah.
are you? Right? Like, my time's precious. But in France, you're like, absolutely. We'll meet you
Tuesday
for drinks.
at
Of
4?
Of course we'll go have dinner. Like we just do.
Yeah.
And we've met a lot of great people. And that's the same thing as me saying, they have to be in the friendship market and you have to be, right? So
Yeah.
we very much are. And I'm more extroverted than Roberto, but he is surprised because he's also in the friendship market. He will say, yes. I'll be like, hey, we're going to go meet these total strangers for dinner. And he's like, okay, let's go.
Have you had any awkward ones?
Yes. The most awkward was perfectly pleasant people, no names, but we realized only after we got home that we didn't laugh one time during the dinner.
Oh, that's a bummer when that happens.
I'm always going to be making dry remarks or jokes, whatever. And I was like, okay, they were really nice. But the reason I was like not sure was because afterwards I was like, I just don't know that they have a sense of humor.
You're on a path to get a passport, correct?
I am not. We've done 3 years of visitor visas, which are a year at a time. But it's important that people understand you can go in for 3 months without anything, just a passport. 3 months is a long time. And my advice to people really is go for 3 months and just check out a bunch of different cities. You don't need to drive, get on the train, go to some Airbnbs. I also say, don't just spend 2 days in 20 cities, like choose 3 and spend a week, go so you can really get the feel, because just like in the States, everything is so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want the pros or the cons first?
Let's start pros. Let's go optimistic first.
It's gorgeous. It's just so beautiful.
It really is.
We just feel so much more relaxed there. And not just because sometimes I'm like, oh, is it just because I'm not as busy? I don't know as many people. It's not as crazy, but it's actually very concrete things. I don't drive. I don't have to deal with traffic.
That's a huge one. I'm so mean in the car.
Traffic just is terrible for the mind and the body. So not having to deal with that is fantastic. We have free public transportation. So if I'm going to go to Paris, I pay for that train. But the little tram is brand new and clean and easy, and it's free for residents. So that's another pro. The calm that I'm talking about also comes from knowing that people don't have guns. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in a crowd, we had a No Kings rally in Montpellier, when there was one here in America. It's not crossing my mind that there could be someone who's going to show up with a gun. Whereas in Austin, when I go to rallies, and I go to as many as I can, like I went to the first pro-choice rally after abortion was made illegal in Texas. I was really frightened, and Roberta was like, you stay on the edge of that crowd, don't get stuck in the middle, like all these things that's just so normal for us, right? So I think that makes us calmer. And we could be more calm, honestly, if we stopped reading the American news every day. I'm not at that point that I can be that disengaged, but...
Well, you're coming back.
And my people are here.
Yeah, true.
I have friends now that have been in France for 20 plus years. They are disengaged. They know the broad strokes.
Yeah.
But they don't feel it in their bones like we do.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds nice.
And it's cheaper.
Even just something as simple as tips.
Other good stuff, of course, is the food. The food is so fresh. It's all organic. And they're all very, very friendly about our French. I mean, I guess that's another thing that goes in the positive, is in the smaller cities, they're very patient and kind about someone trying to speak French.
What's interesting is, to me, and this is where my rose-colored glasses come on, what you're describing sounds like an adventure. And I think, because part of what we're talking about but not saying is that we're talking about phases of life, right? We're not in our 20s. We're trying to think about where we want to be. And so I'm drawn to the adventure of it. But somebody could be 25 and doing it. But regardless, to me, I'm getting how interesting to try to learn language and culture, and to try to I don't want to go in and be like Vinny Bag of Donuts from Staten Island who walks in and is like, hey, you don't speak English up in, it's I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person that's really trying to speak French, but it comes out Spanish. And that is exactly what happens to me. And I'm sorry to everyone in France.
I think that there's a balance, though, between when you do something in your 20s and you just kind of dive in head first, and maybe you don't care if your French is good enough or whatever. Again, like you're doing a semester abroad. And then there's also getting too old. So my mom, who's 78 but still sharp as a tack, is always saying, it's so great you guys did this when you did, because I could not undertake this kind of paperwork, bureaucracy, learning a new language. Like there's still so much going on. And so it's sort of like if you wait until your mind is not feeling as great as it once was, it is going to be more challenging. I think there is a sweet spot in your 40s and 50s because I do feel so motivated. I'm such a good student now. I think that's what I was saying about being in your 20s, right? I'm such a good student that I work very hard in my French. I go to my tutor every week. I do my homework, doing all the paperwork too. You really have to stay on top of it. I don't know, to make it all work.
Does that take us into negatives? What are paperwork?
Yeah, we can talk about the negatives.
Yeah.
Well, French has a very famous, complicated bureaucracy. I was prepared a bit because I had gone to school there and I was 27. There were no dorms, I had to find my own apartment and open a bank account and all these things. And France has all these, I call it a French loop. It's a catch-22. They'll say, well, you can't rent an apartment without a bank account, but you can't get a bank account without an address, right? So I had dealt with that kind of stuff and I had to get my electricity bill going and, all the, just kind of the regular living in a place stuff, right? So I knew some of what we were up against. Of course, I had not bought property. I had to get a visa that wasn't a student visa. And Robin, you've read so much in our Substack, right? Of like the smallest task can seem enormous, something that we take.
I always think of that thing that you did one all about how the French just love, like if there's some kind of they don't know what it is, you just have to write a letter. Like everything, you just write a letter and then that somehow, like that makes it work, which is just like, what?
That was the secret to getting a bank account without an address. I finally called someone and explained the situation. He was like, oh, not a problem. Just write a handwritten letter explaining the situation, that you're trying to purchase an apartment and that you need a bank account, and it worked.
Well, there's a handwritten letter. Well, that changes everything.
Everything. Magic.
What I will say is I immigrated here, to New York from Canada, and I went through so much bullshit. This country also is atrocious. So I think it is
I say that too all the time. I'm like, I can't even imagine immigrating here. And you spoke the language, but trying to get a green card, right? It's a nightmare. So I've applied for a working visa. This is kind of the new thing this year I'm like, ooh, say it out loud, but I'm always quote unquote working because I'm a writer. So I'm constantly working on a book. But I haven't been making French income. So that's what makes it okay that I've been doing visitor visa. So now I want to be able to teach there. I want to be able to publish in French and get my books translated. There's all sorts of stuff I want to do. So I've applied for this visa. It took 4 months to get this application ready because it's an entrepreneurial visa saying I'm going to start my own business. And when I went to select what kind of business I was starting, the choices were I produce something, I sell something, I produce and sell something. I'm none of the above. And so I got stuck and I was so mad I was stuck and I knew my consultant was out of town. And you guys,
oh, Jesus.
That is so French. And that is so oh my God, I would have been stuck. That could have been weeks, months. Anyway, there are also things you don't even think about. So these are these things where you're like, I'm pulling out my hair. I'm going to kill somebody. Why is it so hard? I now realize, though, your first 6 months, your first year are the hardest time for all of that because you have so much to do at once, right? Just like moving anywhere. You got to do your internet. You got to do your electricity. You got to do your rent. You got to do your HOA, whatever it is. And each of those is such a challenge.
I want to ask you if, looking at the entire experience, do you have regrets? Do you feel like you fall more in love with the idea or the concept? Is it not what you thought it would be? Is that still okay? All of the above, where does it leave you for someone who's maybe thinking about this?
Well, what you said earlier was very true about wanting an adventure, right? And not wanting to sit on a beach for the last 20 or 30 years of our lives, And I think that it keeps your brain going constantly, like just learning the language. And I have surprised myself in that now I love speaking French. I love getting better at it. The adventure part, I think part of it that's interesting is, after you've been there for months and you're walking around the medieval city, you're not like, you're not gobsmacked anymore. You're sort of like, okay, it's gorgeous, but whatever, this is where I live. So I also tell myself honestly, and I think this is important for anyone, you can always move back. Like you're not giving up your American citizenship. You're not being asked to give up your passport. We have been going with the idea that we will become permanent residents, which is one step away from passports. And the only thing that having a passport would afford us is to be able to vote. So it is absolutely possible that in 20 or 30 or whatever it is that I could feel like I really need to affect this election in France, right? Because they have they have their right wing like we do. But of course, right now it's more important for me to vote in Texas. So I'm voting, absentee. But yeah, you can move back. I think that the scariest stuff is about maybe if are you going to sell your house in the States? Getting rid of everything is very hard. But I also tell people we don't miss anything when they're there, and that's extraordinary. Every so often I'll be like, that really good pair of jeans that really, makes my ass look great. I left that behind. That was a mistake. I should have brought those jeans, But that's about it. There's nothing in the house that I'm like, that table or that chair,
Or that thing that cores a pineapple by corkscrewing in.
The banana stand.
Like it's nice to have.
The banana holder.
Absolutely not. It's a banana hammock, if you will.
Banana hammock. So I think that that's scary. But we've also kind of been doing this, like dipping our toe in, dipping our foot, dipping our leg in that we still own our home in Austin. And I really advise people as well who are thinking about doing this, you really need to talk to a financial advisor. We have one. We went to them. We said, we're thinking of buying an apartment in France. Is that insane? They did all the numbers to talk to us about how we could make it happen. And they recommended holding on to our house as long as possible, which was a surprise. So we have my little studio in the back where I am right now. So when we leave, we're going to put all of our stuff back here and then rent out the house.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like, we do have to acknowledge that this conversation is an incredibly privileged conversation.
Very.
If you have
extremely.
The wherewithal to be able to have a financial advisor, that you're able to be considering this, that's a pretty huge thing. And it makes me sad that there are many people who are in poverty who are stuck in this. I have to be very careful, but in this country right now, the way things are, it takes away some of my hope. And I'm wondering, I think ultimately, because, you and I are of very similar politics as is producer Steph, but do you find that like this makes you feel like optimistic in some way? Like there is a thing you can do if things continue on as they are?
Absolutely. And I mean, there were times I would wake up at 3 a.m. before we had this plan, let's say during lockdown or whatever. And I would just think people are going to arrive in trucks from small town Texas and guns into Austin, right? I really felt like we're going to be forced to leave our house. I don't know. I just had this feeling of like, we're going to have to get in the car in the middle of the night and we're going to like make a run for California, And then even after we started to go to France, I would be like, okay, if for whatever reason we can't fly out, what would we do? We'd go to Mexico, we'd go to Mexico City, and then we could get a plane. And no, it definitely makes me calmer to know we have this place to go. There are friends that I have that are stuck in the United States right now and do not have the money or the luxury to make such a decision. And I really worry about them, right? Especially like my transgender friends. And I understand what a privilege I have. And so I also am always trying to share and make sure that people know they have a place to come if they should need to. I mean, I know it's not a permanent solution to be like, oh, I'm going to go stay with Carolyn in France for a while. But I really do feel like, send me your children, right? Someone needs to get out fast.
They're on their way.
Send them to, like if you need to get out fast, it's not the most convenient place, but we're there. And I also keep trying to convey like the Democrat community in Montpellier is very good, right? Who are dying to do something and they don't know what to do, right? They can't march. And I feel that when I'm there, there is part of me that's like, Am I abandoning my country in its time of need? Should I be there doing more? Is this just a selfish decision to just bail? Am I just bailing? So those are things I think about a lot. And so now this idea of there's a lot of manpower, woman power in Europe, a lot of people that I'm really like, whether it's writing emails, writing postcards, calling senators, or designing websites or doing graphic design for these groups, right? There's a lot of talent and there are all these people with time on their hands. And I feel like that's an untapped resource. So
That's a great way to build community too of like-minded people.
Absolutely. It's so great. So we went to the No Kings rally, 2 days before we came back. And it was full of people we knew. And that was a really nice feeling. And it felt new to really be like, oh my God, we just saw 10 people we know. How do we know 10 people here?
I have 2 questions. My first is what were your top 5 reasons for wanting to retire elsewhere? I know we've talked about, wanting an adventure, but it can't be just that. So what were they?
I think, definitely it was wanting to do something interesting and challenging for our next phase. But a big part of it was definitely politics and where the country's going, and having lived abroad before, really knowing there's another easier way to live with an emphasis on different things, where people aren't go, 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 go all the time, and they aren't all trying to be billionaires. It makes for a very different society when everyone doesn't think that they're going to be Elon Musk.
Climate change was up there for you too, wasn't it?
Oh, you're right. Absolutely, you're right. So, as everybody already knows, Texas is hot and getting hotter, and the summer lasts about 6 months, and it's unbearable. And I'm like a prisoner in my own home. I don't go out. I don't walk. I have horrendous allergies here as well, and I go from walking many miles a day to none. And it just depresses me, or then I'm like, okay, I'll go to the gym or whatever. But climate change is hard. And I tell people, if you're going to make a choice based only on climate change, you're going to be disappointed, because climate change is going to affect you wherever you are. We know that. And I think initially it was about flooding and hurricanes and blizzards, you get the big 3 or whatever. And Montpellier, we had a month of rain. And I thought, oh, what if that's going to be Montpellier's thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to flood the city. It's lots of hills and we're right by the ocean. So it's not about floods, but what if it just rained 6 months out of the year? You just don't know what the thing is going to be necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I think obviously you can make a choice about temperate, what you're getting if you go to Scandinavia and Spain and Italy, but Spain just flooded so much.
It's all changing all the time too.
It's changing so fast that there's just, is there a good solution? I don't know that there is.
My other question is that you said you feel kind of heartbroken in both places. So when you're there, what's the heartbreak?
It's the people. And, when I come back to Austin, I definitely get kind of misty about wow, look at that incredible sunset and that big, big sky. And, Austin's very beautiful in many ways and it's really cool, and some of the things I struggle with as a writer. So I'm in a band now in Austin, and everything I write most of what I write is pretty political, and it's very much playing with language. It's playing with the English language, right? It's funny, or it's puns, or it's talking about current situations. I can't play that stuff in France, maybe at some point I can find an English-speaking audience that would appreciate it. But it seems very sort of site specific. And I feel that way about some of my work in general is my work, my creativity going to be appreciated in the same way if it's not in French? And even if it was in French, even if I get fluent, you guys, I'm never going to speak like a native. I'm never going to understand every cultural reference, right? And sometimes I get overwhelmed. I think about the number of movies that I've seen in my life, the amount of songs that I've listened to in my life, and the amount of references I have, think about something just you're going to need a bigger boat, right? Every single American knows what that means. And you think, how many things are there in French like that? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, where they're referencing something that happened culturally, something that happened in a movie or a TV show or whatever it is, and you're sitting there going, what? Like, what's everybody talking about? That can kind of overwhelm me sometimes.
It's interesting. I know we're like all talking about this, but I feel this was positioned as like a conversation about retirement because Robin wants to retire and is thinking about it recently. And I'm like, I'm also freaking out. And it's not just retirement. It's about like living a future. And that can happen at any age. Like I'm 35 and I know Robin knows this because I made her listen to me over drinks last weekend. But I'm like, I'm 35 and I'm just like, why am I choosing to live here? You know, like it is a choice.
It's not just retirements, it's a life stages conversation versus, and I think Carolyn and I are there, like certainly I know many people who are my age who are just like naturally thinking like about that next phase, but several things are happening that are causing this. One was COVID. Like that was like something like that hadn't happened since the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, where we like a supply chain was disrupted. Like who knew that was a thing? I'm sure, people in the economy field did or economics field did, but I certainly did not know that was an issue until it happened. And then our whole lives got upended by the way we go to work, how we work. And then on top of that, we're hurtling through space and time to some kind of a collision with AI as to how it's going to impact everybody's futures. And on top of that, like everyone's going to be so sad after I'm done talking here, but like the current state of politics globally. And so I think all of those things, it's forcing you to be thinking like a 50-something-year-old or vice versa, because we're all like, if this is all we've got, how do I want to live it? And that's when I was like, why am I holding us around for Stanley Steamer? Like, that's crazy.
I went through a similar thing. I mean, I was living in LA and I was there for 10 years and I went thinking I was going to write screenplays, or work in television or something. And instead I ended up becoming a novelist, which I'm incredibly grateful for and I love it. But at one point I was like, I don't have to be in LA. I don't have to be here to do this. So I had great friends, but it really was this thing of, it's an expensive city, but just being like, I could go anywhere and write books. Hallelujah. What a gift. So where do I want to be? And I think that helped me, again, know that if I relocated to France, if I relocated again, that slowly and surely I would make a community that I wanted. But I think that COVID changed so many things about, as you said, how we work and where we need to be. And it changed a lot of things in Europe as far as the visas, because there weren't rules in place for being a digital nomad. And there are websites now that are like, oh, where are the best places to be a digital nomad? I'm like, oh my God, these like 20-somethings are literally traveling all over the world, spending 6 weeks in this place, 6 weeks in that place. France has just started to try and crack down on a little bit and say like, okay, if you're in France and you're working, it doesn't matter where your money's coming from, you're working and you need to pay taxes. But it's still a little bit of a Wild West. And of course, if you're working with an American company, you have to deal with the time change. There are things that make it challenging, but it's just such a different world than when we were growing up. And even now, Robin, I go away for 6 months and there's some people I talk to all the time on the phone. You and I will talk on the phone, right?
Doesn't matter where you are. We talk when you're on the way to a doctor's appointment.
WhatsApp is so extraordinary, right? It's like the best gift. It's crystal clear and it's free. And I have friends who treat it like it is 1994 and it's going to cost them $60 to call me, right? They don't call, they're sort of like, I'll talk to you when you get back. And I'm like, we could talk.
Even just like FaceTime. It's like literally we could do a Zoom. It's not, there's a lot of technology, friends.
And Roberto, I love that. We kind of like, we make some cocktails at 5:00 and we Zoom friends here who are having their coffee and just catch up. It's great.
It's interesting. To me, I feel like the optimism is in a new adventure and in just like taking some risks and trying some new things and not just saying like, I'm just kind of done just being like, I can't believe this is our country. I can't believe that half our country thinks the way they think and how awful and racist and homophobic and watching like more things erode. Like I don't have to stay in it. And I think that that like your moment of like, I don't have to stay in LA. Anytime I've had a light bulb moment where I realize I have the freedom that I am the one who's keeping myself in my own little chains, that's to me, I'm always up to something good.
Let me ask you guys, when you think about doing this yourselves, what are your biggest concerns? What scares you the most about it?
I mean, I just moved here 6 years ago, and I worked really hard to build a community, and I feel like I just got to the place where like I like over indexed, you know. I had this like huge community, and I wouldn't say that I like loved everyone in it, but I liked them and I felt like I needed them, and I was like, you know, it takes a while to like suss people out. And now I've just gotten to this point where I'm like, I have cleaning out my closet the other day, and I wanted a friend to just come over and sit with me while I did it. And I'm like, that takes a very specific friend that is just going to like come and watch you clean out your closet. When you move to a new place, you don't have that friend. And like, I've moved to new places often, not necessarily new countries, but that takes a while to get to like that level of friendship. And I just got there like a year or two ago.
I understand.
I feel like, and I'm like, now I'm going to fucking leave. And that's real. Like, that's in my everyday. I see those people and I like love them. Whereas like these other things that I'm afraid of, like he who shall not be named, or like a medical bill that's going to come my way, or like future sustainability or whatever, like those are abstract concepts. Like they're definitely coming and they're becoming a lot more real. But they're not as real as like my friends that I love, you know? So it's like choosing to break up with something that I know exists for something that could be.
Okay, so two things I'm going to say to that is that one, I realized when we got back to France in September, we had to gather keys to our apartment from various people. And I realized we'd given our keys to like 4 different couples. But that means we had friends that we trusted that much within 4 years to say, hey, just in case, we take a set of our keys. It seemed amazing. And also what I'm telling myself right now is that I just, at least with the split time, my heart might be breaking a little bit in each place, but I enjoy everything so much when I'm there. So right now, I'm enjoying seeing my friends so much. Every single person, I just go with it and I'm like, here you are. There's your face. I'm so happy. You know, like, I'm just loving it. I'm just loving every minute that I'm spending with anyone. And I know that after years of that, you know, you kind of just be like, you know, I'm going to go have dinner with my mom. Same old, you know.
And then I have a second smaller fear that is around work.
Of course.
You know, like New York is so New York. Like there's so much to do here. There's so many connections to make. There's so much like, I don't know that I get work from that, but I assume that there's like being part of the community. It like makes people think of you more. And I'm scared to leave that for like a quieter city.
I think it's hard in any of the big cities, New York, LA, London, Paris, to feel like you're done. You know, you can feel mentally done or like you're exhausted, but to feel like you did everything that you could do in that city, it's just impossible.
Like I accomplished, I beat it. Yeah, mine are similar. Like mine would be friends, but also my kids. I don't know, like for every fear, I think I have something I'm combating it with, which tells me it's something I really want to do because I'm trying to be like, well, I have that fear, but I already have that handled, you know, because I'm like, I'm inviting all my friends and some of them have to go. Like, I'm like a guy who's going to try to pick up 100 girls. By the end of the night, at least one's got to say yes. Yeah. Like, and I'm like, well, that works. You know, so I'm like, I'm asking all my friends to go and I'm doing the hard press. So like, that's how I think.
You know, I am. I'm like, you guys loved Montpellier, right?
I know.
Right?
I'm like, what, and we'll be close to Carolyn. I'm like, so that's one thing is that money does concern me in that, do we have enough? Is this too soon, you know, to be able to do this? Can Mary, you know, work remotely, continue to work remotely? And how's that going to look? And make an appointment with my financial dude and be like, because I need him to tell me if I'm like, honey, you are not even close to this dream. I need someone to say that because I'm already down the path. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and of course, like, what if I can, but it's only really specific, like I can do it, but the passport part's going to be hard because they're starting to close things up. You know, it's like, I don't have enough passive income but there's something that stops me that I can't get it.
That doesn't exist. There's always a way around.
I would also recommend, though, to your listeners, when it comes to the financial stuff, like I said, I know it's in the first 5 one of our Substacks, because like I'm not gonna be able to remember the site exactly. There's a site that compares the cost of living in your current city to any city you want.
Ooh.
Right? It's awesome. So I can say, here's the, I live in Austin and I want to see the cost of living in Montpellier. I want to see it in Toulouse, Lyon, Paris. I could put in all, Madrid, whatever. And it tells you everything. It's like, here's how much rent is. Here's how much the meal is. Here's how much, transportation, gasoline, there are things that are going to be more expensive. Gasoline is very expensive in Europe. Energy is more expensive in Europe. But as I've told you, almost everything else is cheaper. But to be able to do that, like, what's the dollar to donuts? Is that the phrase I'm looking for? To be able to really look at that comparison is really useful. And as you said, I mean, it's so good to go just like sit with an accountant for even a small amount of time, right? You don't have to have someone permanently on retainer, right? Yeah. To say, okay, here's what I have and here's what my savings are. There's also a big question of like, the person will ask you about your quality of life, about how much you spend every day now. How much are you willing to change that? How important is that to you, right? So if you go abroad, if you move abroad, does that mean you can't take any other vacations? I mean, it seems like a vacation, right? But you will be working. You know what I mean? Like, okay, does that mean, okay, from now on, you can't take 2 yearly beach holidays, or you can't eat out as much as you want, or whatever it is. I mean, listen, it's the same budgeting you're going to do for retirement, no matter what. Yeah. Right? I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen, but I think it's just good to know, to start to look and think in those ways, because for a lot of us, I'm such a like put a paper bag over my head. Like I didn't want to talk about those numbers for a very long time. And then somehow you hit 50 and you're like, I probably should have my eyes wide open about those numbers. That's something else that's really important. Your partner has to be in. Definitely I've talked to other people who are like, I really want to do this. My husband does not, or my wife does not. And I think it's real hard to drag someone behind you because it's hard. It's a lot of work, whether it's the bureaucracy or the language or whatever it is, it's a lot of work. And so if you have someone who's not a willing participant, I don't think that's going to be good for your relationship.
That's valid.
And you're either both going to end up going back or one of you is going to end up going back. I met a guy who comes to Montpellier every summer for 3 months. He loves it. He's dying to live there. His girlfriend's not interested. Doesn't even come for the 3 months.
Wow.
Right? And I'm like,
I bet their relationship's super fresh though. See you in the 3 months.
I was like, one of those things has got to give, right? He's either got to stop coming or he's got to end that relationship. But I'm just saying, I didn't even realize that until I was in it, where I was just like, if my partner was not as like ready to dive in, I couldn't do this.
I keep comparing it to like having a baby. Like somebody, if you're on either sides, one person is going to give in, and you better be sure you gave in for the right reason and that you're really willing to do it. Because it's like there's nothing worse than one parent who doesn't want to be a parent.
I will say having a baby is a little more permanent.
Yeah.
You can move. You can't return the baby.
All right. So, Carolyn, tell people where they're going to get all your stuff, read all your stuff.
I have a middle reader series for 8 to 12-year-olds called The Lost Children. And I have a young adult series called Time Zero, which is dystopian, about fundamentalists taking over Manhattan. And probably researching that series helped me want to move abroad.
That series is fantastic and was on the bookshelf of Amy Poehler behind her in an interview.
During COVID.
It was like the New York Times, right?
Yeah. And so now Roberto and I have Escape Hatch France, and it's been really interesting. We swap every
You can always tell
week.
when Roberto's written one and when you've written one. I love it. Because your voices are so distinct.
And I feel like in the beginning, maybe not so much, but now people are saying that I think it's really gelled into that. So that's Escape Hatch France on Substack. And on Instagram, I'm just Carolyn Cohagan.
You are the best. I love you. I'm so glad that you were willing to come on and chat with us. This was fantastic. Well, there you have it, folks. To move or not to move? I'm not sure we solved that question, but we did kind of get started on the topic. What else can we do, folks? I mean, we're just here to get things rolling. Thank you to Carolyn for coming in and chatting with us today. You're going to want to follow Carolyn's Substack page, Escape Hatch France, for more about the process of moving abroad from the U.S. They are all fantastic, and they are linked in the bio. For more Robin, and you may need that, you probably don't need it, but if you do, you can follow me at Real Rob Hops on all the platforms, all the socials, as the kids today say. Well Adjusting is an Edit Audio original series. It's exec produced by Steph Colburn and Robin Hopkins. Our producer is Maria Passingham, and our production manager is Kathleen Specker. This episode was edited by Oliver Grandis. Thank you to the entire Edit Audio team and to you for listening. Oh, hey, before you take out those AirPods, this show is just for entertainment. If you are in need of help, please, please, please reach out to a professional. Go ahead and get that help. You deserve it.